The next monument that correlated to the Giza Plateau sits in the heart of Detroit, in the heart of Hart Plaza, is the Horace Son Fountain. And the first thing I'd like to point out about the Horace Son Fountain is the plaque that comes along with it. And the plaque reads, "This is an engine of water, the gateway to a great city." And I just want to point that out because that's the first time today Hart Plaza will be referred to a gateway, not the last. Now the fountain itself is dedicated to Horace Dodge. Horace Dodge, the automobile pioneer from Dodge Motor Company. And the fountain has two stainless steel legs topped by a large stainless steel ring. It has 300 lighting functions, 300 water jets, and it blasts a large jet of water into what they describe as the mound-like pool. Now this was done by an artist by the name of Isamu Noguchi. Now Noguchi did several of the key pieces of artwork down here, including the general arrangement of Hart Plaza. Now according to Noguchi, in the artist's own words, what he wanted to do with this fountain, symbolically speaking, is to create a new fountain which represented our times and our relationship with outer space. And I tell you what, when you see this thing at night, and there's lights flashing around the top of it, and this jet of water blasting out the bottom, you can see what Noguchi was saying. It does kind of resemble a UFO to a point. And then in the daytime, you get scenarios like this you see down at the bottom. People go down here on a sunny day and literally try to catch the rainbow and try and play in the rainbow. Incredible fun. Now the fountain itself is dedicated to Horace Dodge. And I mentioned earlier we're going to talk about some synchronicities and some coincidences, and we're going to start right here with this Horace Dodge fountain. Well, first of all, the name Horace in itself, I think we can look at that as coincidental. Well, this is actually dedicated to Horace Dodge and son. Horace's son, his name is Horace Jr. So in a literal sense, we can look at this fountain as dedicated to Horace the Elder and Horace the son. And in Egyptian mythology, in some cases, of course, there was a Horace the Elder and a Horace the son. Now, Horace the Elder, he just happened to be born in Niles, Michigan, like the Nile River. Can't say for sure, but when Horace passed away, he was laid to rest next to his best friend and his brother John. They were laid to rest off 8 Mile, Detroit in Woodlawn Cemetery in this Egyptian-styled mausoleum flanked by 2 sphinxes and surrounded by obelisks. At this point, I'm like, wow, there's Egyptian symbolism just surrounding this guy. And I've done my research and I haven't found anything saying how interested Horace Dodge was in Egyptian symbolism, but here you go. So I actually went out here to get some photos, just do a little digging around, and I was quite surprised by the energy. It wasn't the energy I expected to be in a cemetery, but there's almost a positive feeling energy. But anyway, I'm walking around this place. Something glowing red catches the corner of my eye. It was coming from inside the doorway up there. So I crept up the steps of the mausoleum, feeling a little uneasy about climbing on Horace and John's mausoleum, but crept up there, and I look inside the door, and the entire back of the mausoleum is a stained glass relief of the Egyptian pyramids. A little different though, there's a gateway leading into them. So at this point, I'm like, wow, could Horace Dodge have really taken on the archetype of the mythological figure Horace? I mean, there's Egyptian symbolism to surround this guy, and he's even got a fountain dedicated to him in the heart of Hart Plaza, which may be correlated to the Giza Plateau. So getting back to the fountain itself, I want to talk about the actual shape of the fountain. Although it's dedicated to Horace the Elder and Horace the son, when you look at the shape of the fountain, symbolically speaking, I think it looks a lot like the ancient Egyptian goddess Nu and her husband Geb. And Nu was venerated as the sky itself, the barrier between order and chaos. Geb is the earth, the mounds, even the primordial mounds. And remember, they describe this pool underneath the fountain as the mound-like pool. So I think we surely can look at this symbolic, but also Nu and Geb. Nu and Geb, they happen to have 5 children: Isis, Osiris, Nephthys, Set, and of course, in some cases, Horus the Elder. Not only that, but a sacred symbol of Nu just happened to be the ladder to heaven that Osiris would use to traverse the heavenly skies. Osiris is, of course, linked to the constellation of Orion. The precise constellation, we're speculating that the Horace the Elder and the Horace the Son fountain may occupy the middle belt star. So, although this fountain is dedicated to Horace the Elder and Horace the Son, I think symbolically we can look at this as incorporating their entire family. Their entire family. Now, did Noguchi realize? He did say this fountain was symbolic of our relationship to outer space. But did he realize he was incorporating all of the symbolism of all these Egyptian gods and goddesses? Or was this maybe something a little bit unconscious, possibly maybe a little bit of both? Well, I came across this quote from Graham Hancock and Robert Duvall's book, Talisman, Secret Faiths, Secret Cities. I think helps to describe exactly what Noguchi was doing here. And what they say is that there are numerous exhortations calling upon initiates to make copies on the earth of a region of the sky called the Duat, incorporating the constellation of Orion, which is associated with the god Osiris, and the star Sirius, which is associated with the goddess Isis. This was the sky region believed to be the location of the ancient Egyptian netherworld, where souls journeyed and were judged after death. It was therefore thought to be vitally important to gain foreknowledge of it and the trials that awaited the soul there. So we learn from what the book of what is in the Duat, that one way to attain this gnosis was to build copies on the ground of the hidden circle of the Duat in the body of Noon. And that's perceivably what Noguchi did down here at Hart Plaza. He built a copy on the ground of the hidden circle of the Duat in the body of Noon. So I want to talk a little bit about Isamu Noguchi, because he was an incredible and world-renowned artist that came to Hart Plaza and incorporated this incredible architecture to possibly correlate to the Giza Plateau as well as the heavens and the constellation of Orion. But the question is, did Noguchi realize he was doing this? Was this intentional or unconscious? Well, Noguchi did happen to practice a form of art that's called surrealist art. And in this form of art, these artists would practice tapping into their unconsciousness and coming back with dreamlike, sometimes hallucinatory visions, and bringing them into fruition into the forms of art. And Noguchi was absolutely amazing at this. Now, relevance to our inquiry down here at Hart Plaza. In 1947, important year, we'll get back to that, but in 1947, Noguchi proposes to build this monument that was going to be known as the face to be seen from Mars. And this was going to be an earthen structure made out of mounds and earth. It was going to be absolutely enormous, a mile long, half-mile wide, have a pillar for a nose, a mile tall. It's going to be so big, it would only make sense viewed from at least as far away as the moon, but most likely Mars. Noguchi said this in his own words. And what Noguchi intended by building this monument, this is in 1947, and atomic bombs are being tested and dropped. And Noguchi's actually a Japanese American. This really affected Noguchi. So what he intended by building this proposed face to be seen from Mars is that if we were to destroy ourselves in a nuclear holocaust, that extraterrestrials would be able to recognize that at one time a civilization had occupied the planet Earth. This is an incredible idea by Noguchi, especially in 1947, because at this time there was no landscape art. This was a first. Noguchi's known as a pioneer of landscape art. So this was an original idea in 1947. Well, this story gets even more incredible. Approximately 30 years later, NASA sends back images from the Viking orbiter from Mars of a region called the Cydonia region. And what you see up top here, this is the Cydonia region on Mars. It appears as if there's a grouping of pyramids and a face. This has become known as the face on Mars. When you put the face on Mars discovered by NASA next to Noguchi's face to be seen from Mars, I mean, the images are strikingly similar, And this story's been discussed before. Richard Hoagland's discussed this in his few books and others, but this is the first time that I believe this has been put together with some of Noguchi's artwork and how this could correlate with some of Noguchi's later artwork. So, I'm just calling the Mars face, Mars's face to be seen from Earth, and Earth's face, or Noguchi's face, Earth's face to be seen from Mars. Absolutely similar. Now, the question is, did Noguchi tap in to possibly the consciousness of the deceased Martians? We'll use the word Martians for lack of a better term right now. Or could Noguchi and the Martians have tapped into a totally outside source and came back with this imagery and symbolism? I can't say for sure, but I think the symbolism and the imagery is strikingly similar. I think something's obviously going on here.